A poet friend of ours up in Vermont, Kate Maynard, taught me in a beautiful piece that she wrote for her congregation that in fact we do glow, we humans. We actually glimmer. It was a study in Japan in 2009 that found that people are actually bioluminescent as well. We give off light, though it's too dim for us to actually see. And in fact, all living things emit light through chemical reactions of free radicals in our body. That's as scientific as I'm going to get this morning. So, supposedly the glow follows a circadian rhythm and peaks in late afternoon. And supposedly our faces are the shiniest parts of our body. And that for the glow of a person to best show up in these studies, they needed to be clean and the rest of their body naked. No dirt or sweat or anything covering that obscures the photons. I mean, maybe this is something of what people who speak of seeing auras are talking about. I wouldn't doubt that there are those among us who can pick up on our glowing more than others of us. And then, of course, there are those accounts of mystical experiences where people reference this reality as well, this light glowing from within. One of my favorite descriptions of a mystical experience is the monk who was a hermit in Kentucky, Thomas Merton, many of you might know, who on March 18th, 1958, was walking down the street in Louisville, Kentucky, and had this profound mystical experience. There's actually, it just kind of makes me laugh, there's a plaque there at the spot where he had the mystical experience. I don't know, something feels ironic about that, to have a plaque about it, but there it is nonetheless. When you're in Louisville, you can see it. He said this in describing it in his book, Conjecture. His book is called Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander. In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all those people, that they were mine and I was theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation. This sense of liberation from an illusory difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud. I have the immense joy of being human, a member of a race in which God Himself became incarnate. As if the sorrows and stupidities of the human condition had overwhelmed me, now I realize what we all are. And if only everybody could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. We are all walking around shining like the sun. And as the plaque says in Louisville, this revelation led him into a deeper engagement, even as a monk living in a hermitage by himself, through his writings to press for greater social justice in this country. We are all walking around shining like the sun. If we really saw that, really believed that, how would it impact how we lived? It was a mystical experience that Peter, James, and John had on the mountaintop that day, with Jesus also transfigured before their eyes. Or was it that they, for a moment in time, suddenly saw Him as He truly was? Saw this human being, the human being, aglow with the light of God. And in this vision, or in this deeper glimpse into the heart of things, the truth of things, they also saw the two great patriarchs of their faith standing beside Jesus. The great liberator Moses, who led the Hebrew people out of slavery and into the promised land, and the great prophet Elijah, who was protector of Israel's relationship with God at the time when so many had turned towards the worship of other gods. the great liberator and the great protector, stood on either side of Jesus, the great Savior. And supposedly he was shining like the sun. So we are privy to this vision through our scriptures this morning, just before we enter into the season of Lent. So you see, we've been in the season of the light of Epiphany. We've been in the season of Epiphany. And just like a light will sometimes flare up before it's extinguished, so too this is the vision of Jesus flaring up before he moves towards Jerusalem and falls to ashes there. But this vision gifts us with at least three things that can help us prepare to enter into the penitential season of Lent this Wednesday. So first of all, we are reminded that there is the everyday seeing that we usually and casually live by, and then there is the really seeing that we might be occasionally blessed with. These momentary visions that usually flare up and illuminate the world as Merton's did, with a deeper and truer sense of the love that is at the heart of all things, of the light that dwells within all of us, our loves, our friends, our enemies alike. We see that we all glow. Have you had that kind of experience, of that kind of seeing, even if for a moment, that kind of illumination? The founder of Methodism, John Wesley, described his experience as his heart strangely warmed. We can't make such experiences happen, such insights like Wesley's or Merton's or Peter's. They just occur unexpectedly, like in a shopping district in a random city, and they come as pure gift. But we certainly can position ourselves better to be open to such experiences. And the season of Lent is ideal for that positioning. What can we remove from our daily routines and lives or add into them that might leave us more susceptible to an experience of the indwelling divine shining within us and within others? Can we sit with boredom more and not turn to our phone so quickly? Can we give up some habitual routine that tends to numb us? Might we take on a new practice of prayer or reading that helps us to see better? First of all, there is the everyday seeing, and then there's the deeper seeing if we truly want to see. Secondly, whether we have the mystical experience or not, we can take the mystic's word for it and accept it. That what is truest is not our separateness and isolation from one another, but our deeper and truer connectedness. The mystic Julian of Norwich experienced this as well and wrote, "The love of God creates in us such a oneing, O-N-E-I-N-G, oneing, that when it is truly seen, no person can separate themselves from another." Similar to Merton's, I love everyone around me. I love these people. Can we have our awareness altered this Lent for us to see how intimately we are a part of one another, and that your sorrow is my sorrow, and that your loss is my loss, your gain, my gain? What encounters might God grant us where this way of seeing things can ignite a response in us? From the homeless on the street we might pass, to our neighbor who's in a hard spot, to someone we do not like but to whom we find a way to care, to our non-human neighbors and seeing them as glowing with the light of God. So on Friday, I saw this remarkable documentary called All That Breathes. And it's about these couple of men in Delhi, India, who have made it their life's purpose to help and restore wounded kites, which are birds of prey there. I mean, these birds are like a dime a dozen, swarming around trash heaps. I mean, it's like pigeons in the city, these birds. Tons. And these gentle men have given their lives to them. And what the documentary reveals in this breathtakingly quiet way is how their devotion to these birds is a devotion to life itself, a devotion to all that breathes, a devotion to God. We are all of a piece. If we truly accept that, how would we then be called to act in this world? Could Lent be a time to try and see that and act like that just a little more? You are me and I am you. We are one. And thirdly, it's worth noting that there seems to be a reason Jesus glows. So just as the Japanese scientists came to realize that the light emitted from a human being is better seen when they are clean, free of grime and dirt and clothes, one of the ways we as humans seem to best hide our light, and conversely, one of the ways that great saints and luminaries in the world seem to shine, is when they relinquish rivalry over and against one another. Not only do saints and luminaries have this capacity to see more deeply and recognize our connectedness, our oneness with all of life, they then act in ways that bring such oneness and connection fully into the light of day. There's this erroneous belief, call it the original sin maybe, that for us to be, we must displace the other. But that is not so. This is illusion and sin. If you think of all the great luminaries, the Gandhis and Martin Luther Kings, the Dorothy Days, and all the lesser known ones, and some of whom, I'll give a little plug to our Lenten series on Tuesday evenings this Lent, starting not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday. We'll have a Soup and Saints series where we eat soup together, and we're going to learn about a particularly, maybe a less known saint and more contemporary saint among us. But what, if you think about these great luminaries, what you'll see is that they work towards great love and justice, not by fighting enemies, but in an effort to convert them to their friends, not by displacing them, but by bringing them alongside the movement towards what is good and right. All right, Jesus is the quintessential example of this. He is unwilling to transfer the sorrow, suffering, and pain of the world onto others, but rather receives it into himself and transforms that pain as if in a furnace to forge something new and beautiful. That is what happens at Good Friday and Easter Sunday. His true nature is unencumbered by that which obscures our light. He needs not to displace others in order to establish himself. Rather, he allows himself to be displaced for the sake of others. This isn't a vision of him on the mountaintop that reminds us that although he's going to go through something awfully human, he's really God. But it's a vision that shows him shining bright like the sun because he's chosen the path that blesses all of life while not displacing the other. And that is how the human glows. That is how the human glows. It's been called the indwelling divine, the Christ within, dayspring of the soul. Dayspring from on high be near, daystar in my heart appear, till thy inward light impart, glad my eyes and warm my heart. Amen.